then you want to make sure that you try to stay. I'm sorry, I forgot to press record, so I just realized that. So anyway, so talking about healthy holidays, and we are on number 2, staying mindful. And that third point, or that fourth point, enjoy and savor your favorite dish. That's what I was just talking about. So trying to savor as much as possible the food that's in front of you, enjoying the smell and the way it looks, and all the goodness about it. And that can kind of help with portion control and that sort of thing. Okay, so, oops. All right. And another point as far as staying mindful is, you know, that first bite is always, if you think about it, the last time you ate something that was, you know, really delicious, that first bite or two is always the best. So making sure that you kind of pay attention, you know, that whole being mindful for that first or second bite and enjoying it completely instead of just kind of checking out. And if you don't love it, don't eat it. A lot of times food is everywhere, so it may be at your office or, you know, you go to someone's house and there's food everywhere. And we tend to eat things that we don't really like. They're just kind of there. And that can happen a lot of times when we're overly hungry too. Food's there, we see it, we eat it. And so really kind of trying to take a step back and realizing, all right, I'm not sure that I really am getting full enjoyment out of this. So if you don't love it, just, you know, don't eat it. All right. So I don't see any questions yet, so we're going to move on. Number 3, be a healthy host. So often, like I said, we host people at our homes, or maybe we're hosts at other people's homes, you know, helping out at our parents' or grandparents' house. So making sure that you offer lower calorie, nutrient-dense dishes. I mentioned that term earlier, and remember that just means, you know, lower calorie, but high in nutrition. And so a lot of those, I'm going to give you some examples, but trying to offer, you know, a leafy green salad on the side, or some veggies that aren't, you know, full of cream and cream soups and lots of butter, you know, kind of getting creative. There's so many different recipes that are out there. Cooking Light has a great magazine that's out right now this month, and then in December too, they'll have another issue out, but lots of great ideas for just kind of changing up your recipes and different ways to prepare, so you can have all the sort of tried and true traditional things you're used to having, but maybe you throw in some different recipes, some healthier options. And that second point, serve smaller portions. So mini muffins or smaller cookies, or you know, large versus larger ones, or double cut pies. So trying to think about portion control can be helpful. One example that I think of, one Thanksgiving, it's been probably 3 years ago, I prepared, like I mentioned earlier, my grandmother's dressing, and it is the real deal. There is no cutting back. It is, you know, full of all sorts of goodness. So, so I had prepared 2 pans. It's just, that's what the recipe makes, and it makes kind of one larger pan and then a one somewhat smaller pan. And when I got to my mother-in-law's house, I forgot to take the second pan out. So I only put, I actually think I put the smaller pan instead of a larger pan. And we had a good number of people. We probably had 18, 20 people there. And by the time I realized that I had, you know, left the other one sort of warming in the oven, we were done, and everyone was, of course, more than satisfied with the meal, but we hadn't completely overdone it on dressing. So that's just kind of one example. It just made me think, like, okay, so I wonder if I had put out both pans, would we have eaten both pans? And more than likely, yes. You know, so the larger your serving dishes are, the more people are apt to eat. So kind of keeping that in mind too, maybe splitting up, you know, what your serving platters look like, and refreshing as you need to. But that's just kind of a good idea to, you know, whenever we see abundance, if you think like Costco, when you go to Costco, you have a tendency, you buy these huge boxes of whatever it is. And the more we have, the more, you know, that kind of gives us the feeling the more we need to eat. So, and plate size matters too. Over time, our plates in general have gotten larger and larger. So think about your plate size, because it's important, of course. The more room you have on your plate, the more you're going to be apt to fill it. And that, of course, applies not only on holidays, but on every day. All right. So modifying recipes, too, is another thing you can do as a healthy host. So the three things that are involved there are reducing, which means cutting out, high fat or sugary ingredients, eliminating. Sometimes you can choose to completely leave out non-essential ingredients, extra butter, oil, cheese, salt, sugar. One person that comes to mind when I think of that is Paula Deen. So there is always an abundance of butter in all her recipes. And what I've learned, a lot of her food is, delicious, but it needs about a quarter of the butter, and it's perfectly delicious without all the extra. So a lot of times we can kind of eliminate, all that extra, and it can still taste really good. And substituting too, we can substitute things in to kind of replace some of the higher fat, higher calorie ingredients. So on this next slide, I just kind of thought of broccoli casserole. That's one that we usually have, especially on Thanksgiving. And so you can see that just by replacing, sort of redoing the recipe, I was able to have a savings, if you look there on the bottom, of 145 grams of fat and 1,305 calories overall. So that's huge, as you can see, and it's just by, making a few changes. So I changed out the eggs for egg whites. Your broccoli, again, is one of those nutrient-dense, high in nutrition but low in calorie foods, so of course you don't have to worry about that. The sharp cheddar for low-fat sharp cheddar. A can of cream soup for one of the reduced fat cream soups, switching out mayo with either low-fat mayo, or also what I found is Greek yogurt is a good replacement for mayo. Onion, again, is one of those nutrient-dense foods we don't have to worry about, and then just switching out the the Ritz or the crushed butter crackers for just some seasoned breadcrumbs can make obviously a huge difference, and that's just in one dish. So by making all of those changes, it's really easy to still have delicious food, but you just the fat and calorie savings are huge. All right, and then I've given you here some other substitution ideas for when you're cooking. So I won't go through these, all of these, but if you'll just take a look and kind of, for instance, the all-purpose flour. So in order to increase, for those of you who like to bake, to increase the nutrient density in what you're cooking, you might try white whole wheat flour. And that may sound like a joke, but there actually is white whole wheat flour, and it's not quite as dense as whole wheat flour, because if you were to completely replace all-purpose flour with true whole wheat flour, of course the texture of what you're baking is going to change. So, but this white whole wheat flour, which you can find at Publix, at any major grocery store, is a great option, and it's just not, like I said, not quite as dense, and it's going to give a better sort of bite or texture to the baked goods that you're making. And I mentioned earlier the Greek yogurt for the mayonnaise. Sometimes you can either switch out the sugar in what you're baking with the baking Splenda, or just using less. That's always a good option too. We learned a lesson. I had some extra bananas left over, which I always try, and it doesn't always happen. Sometimes they go in the trash can, but I try to use up extra super ripe bananas and make banana bread. Well, my 11-year-old daughter, decided to help me, and I had to go run an errand, and she was supposed to do the dry ingredients, and when I got back, we would do the wet ingredients. So we did that, got it in the oven, or actually before I got it in the oven, I stirred it, and I was thinking something's just not right, and we checked over the ingredients, and we couldn't figure it out, so we put it in the oven, and when we got it out, I said, well, it doesn't look quite the same, and we cut it and we tasted it. And at that point, she realized that she completely forgot the sugar. So you can imagine that it was a little different than what the typical, the recipe itself. This is another one of my grandmother's recipes. It calls for a cup of sugar. So we went from a cup of sugar to absolutely no sugar. So it was more of like a savory banana bread, and but actually it was quite good. And it kind of surprised me a little bit, because I've always thought, okay, a cup of sugar is a lot of sugar, but I've always been a little nervous to kind of mess with it because it is my grandmother's recipe and it's delicious. But I was really surprised that it wasn't that bad. So even at this point, I'm not sure that I would make it with no sugar again, but it could easily have, a half a cup of sugar, or, far less than that cup that it calls for. So that's just a good example of sometimes we can get kind of nervous about messing with recipes, especially when they're those traditional recipes we're used to. But you never know. So just give it a try. And you might kind of try that ahead of time so that you're not too terribly surprised on the day of the holiday. All right. So any questions so far? I don't see anything. And I don't see any hands raised. So number 4 is be a good guest. So a lot of times when we go for the holidays, people will try to push their leftovers off on us because, of course, we tend to cook far too much when we're preparing for holidays. But, leave those leftovers there, your best bet. Or if you really have to have, some of those leftovers, take them home. Take one serving of what you truly love and fully enjoy it. So another way is to make sure you bring a nutrient-dense, lower-calorie dish when you're a guest. Some healthy ideas for that are vegetable platters with a homemade dip. I actually have a recipe for that on my blog, a colorful fruit platter, a delicious salad like I was talking about earlier. And these are some pictures of the things that I've prepared. You see on the left that tree is just a way to include, fruit with some cheese on there too, and then that's rosemary that I used, and that didn't take me any time at all. And these kind of recipes are so easy to find on Pinterest or online. That recipe up on the top is a great salad to have for Thanksgiving. It's one we have every year. It's a cranberry Waldorf salad. So if you've ever made Waldorf salad, it's typically made with mayo and lots of high-calorie ingredients, but this one uses yogurt. So it's a vanilla yogurt, and it's got grapes and apples and a little celery and some nuts and dried fruit, and it's really good. It's one that my mom insists that we have every Thanksgiving. And then that veggie platter, and then the leafy green salad. And those are all, great things to have at any gathering that kind of just, ensure that you have that option to kind of fill that left half of your plate with. All right. So another question for you, number 5 is stay active. How do you stay active during the holidays? So what are some things that you, if you would take a minute and either raise your hand or put in the comment box how you stay active during the holiday season, or how you have in the past, or how you plan to do it differently this year. And I'll give you a minute. All right, somebody says taking evening walks, lots of shopping, right? So we're all hitting the mall a lot and shopping, so making sure you take those walks, that's super. Running, someone said. If you love to run, that's awesome. The turkey trot and body track. So thank goodness you have body track to kind of keep you, motivated, and certainly turkey trots are a great way to stay active and give you a goal to work towards. Let's see, anybody else? All right, those are all great ways to stay active because, of course, the activity side of staying, healthy is also important. And if our goal is weight maintenance, then activity can certainly help. So some of these you already mentioned, but making a new tradition. So even on the day of the holiday, sometimes we sort of give in and think, all right, it's Thanksgiving Day, I'm not going to move a muscle, but the more you can stay active on that day, the better. So it may not be a tradition that you've done in the past, but it may be one you start this year. So taking a walk either before or after of the meal or both is a great way to kind of just feel better and not so stuffed. Participate, like somebody else said, the turkey trot or the jingle bell run. There's also, around Christmas time and that sort of thing, there's usually a run. And you don't have to do a 5K or a 10K, or you don't have to run necessarily. If you're more of a walker, I'm not a big runner, but I'll kind of walk and run when I do these turkey trots and jingle bell runs and the different 5Ks that I do throughout the year, and that's perfectly fine. So just making that goal to kind of get out there is great, and it's such a festive, fun way just to be active, which is important, finding something fun. Keeping your workouts at body track, someone mentioned that, so making sure you're still hitting body track as much as possible. And, just remembering too, if you don't have your usual set time, just making time to squeeze in a little bit here and there. The research that's been done that looks at physical activity, even little bouts of activity really do matter. So 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, just getting up, say you're, somewhat sedentary at work, getting up from your desk and taking the stairs, every little bit of activity matters. Setting a daily step goal can help too. So if you have a Fitbit, or maybe you just use your phone, a lot of people use their phone too to track steps. Or my husband just got one of the sort of old school pedometers, and that's an option too. But really kind of thinking about, that step goal, and whether it's 10,000 or 8,000 or 5,000, just kind of being mindful of what your step goal is and trying to keep that up throughout the holiday season. All right, so moving on to number 6, being in charge at holiday parties. So this is a big one. Of course, there's, lots of festivities and lots of parties that we tend to end up at. And I talked about earlier not going starving, when you hit Thanksgiving or whatever holiday, and the same thing applies to holiday parties. A lot of times we think, okay, I won't eat. I know the party's tonight, and I'll just go hungry all day in preparation. And really, it really does sort of backfire. If you've ever done that and you think about what happened, we just tend to be overly hungry, and it kind of backfires on us. So as much as you can, eat normally up until the party. You'll be better off. If you look at sort of, I just kind of thought about what might be at a party and the little munchies that are available. So cheese and crackers, a little grapes, and you're just kind of grazy, you're super hungry, you hit a party, you have some mixed nuts, a couple of glasses of wine, some M&Ms, some broccoli, so you throw in some green stuff, and some cream cheese dip. But you can see very quickly that adds up. So you're looking at around 1,200 calories and 60 grams of fat just in those little sort of munchies. And that's before you've even eaten a meal, if that's what's available. So, if you can go and kind of have eaten balanced throughout the day and eaten well, then you'll just have more of a tendency to kind of get to the party and be able to do that point number 3, do a quick once over of the food before you fill your plate. So, and again, thinking about that plate, model or method we talked about earlier, kind of think about even small plates can be designed so that you include some of that produce, and then a little bit of protein, and maybe some crackers or something as your grain. So still keeping that plate in mind really can work no matter where you are. Another tip is not to park yourself by the hors d'oeuvre table. So sometimes we get to parties and maybe we're uncomfortable a little bit, so we just hang out by the appetizer or hors d'oeuvre table, and that can get us into trouble too, of course, because we just tend to mindlessly graze. So kind of, keeping yourself maybe a little distance from the hors d'oeuvre table is a good idea. And before you get there, sort of setting your intention to kind focus on something else besides the food. So maybe figuring out even just one thing you can look forward to that you're going to focus on. So whether it's socializing or dancing or whatever it is, so that it's not just about the food. All right, so liquid calories are an issue. They seem to be an issue when I talk to clients, seem to be an issue sort of all throughout the year, but in particular this time of year, they're abundant. So I just kind of gave you a rundown here of how many calories are in, some of the more common drinks. So you're looking at, and of course, beers vary a lot too. My husband just recently looked up, he likes IPAs, and so he just looked up IPAs, and he was shocked to find out his particular IPA he likes is, I think it was 250 calories per bottle. So of course that varies a lot, but your light beers typically have 100 to 120 calories. So, and then moving on down, and it's not just, necessarily alcoholic drinks. If you think eggnog is something that's around a lot, and that can be full of calories. And then our coffee drinks, that, those Starbucks drinks that many of us love. It starts with pumpkin stuff around this time and then moves into the peppermint. And those can have tons of calories, tons of sugar. And so just being mindful of, those drinks. A lot of times when I'm working with clients, I encourage them to keep, a food record, to write down what they're eating. And sometimes people will do that, but not record the liquid calories, or not record what they're drinking. And so being aware of what you're drinking is important too, of course, and trying to stick with more of the, lower calorie drinks, and just being aware, I need to go back. There we go. So some other drinks that are just under 200 calories to keep in mind: martinis, mojitos, champagne. So the more sort of complicated your drinks get, usually the more calories they have. So just keeping that in mind when you think calories, they just, it can add up really quickly. Aside from calories, of course, alcohol sort of, one of the reasons we love it, right, is because it also lowers inhibitions. But that can, of course, affect the foods we choose and how much we eat, our portion sizes, that sort of thing. So just being aware it's more than just calories when it comes to alcohol. It also, can impact the food that we eat too. So trying not to drink on an empty stomach. Anyone who's ever done that, and I can raise my hand and say I have, and it doesn't end well. So trying not to drink on an empty stomach is certainly a good idea. Rotating water or spritzer or something, some non-alcoholic drink, every other drink when you're at a party. And again, I said this already, in regards to other things, but planning ahead, thinking about before you get to the party or wherever you're going, and thinking about how much do I want to drink. So sort of setting that intention can be really, really helpful, instead of just getting in a situation and ending up, 3 glasses of wine in, and of course you're not, not going to be real aware at that point. So setting that intention before you go, so that you're, at least it's on your sort of, on your mind, and you have that goal to work towards. All right, number 8, make your resolutions now. So many of us sort of get through the holidays looking towards, okay, I'll worry about that on January 1st. I'll worry about that when I make my New Year's resolution. But as we all know, not many people stick with New Year's resolutions. They just don't work for most people. They're sort of a temporary fix. So as much as you can not sort of look towards January 1st as the date you'll, quote, go back on your diet, anytime we anticipate sort of going on a diet, that just encourages us to kind of overindulge. So I know sometimes clients, when they come to see me for the first time, they'll either have eaten really, really well for the week or two prior, or I've actually had clients tell me that they just ate whatever they wanted and really went to town because they just knew that they were going to come see me, and I was going to take all their favorite foods away. So, which is not what I do. But so anytime we think that someone's going to, put us on a diet, or we're going to put ourselves on a diet, that can kind of lead to overindulging or just encouraging that behavior. So, try to set your intention now versus waiting until the first. If you think back over the years, how that's gone for you, if you've kind of done that or made New Year's resolutions, kind of think about that and what impact that's had on you, and was it a positive experience, and did it get you to where you want to be? Instead of, sort of revamping everything on January 1st, you might think of small habits that can kind of, keep you on track throughout this, super busy holiday season. So I've mentioned a couple times already, eating a healthy, balanced breakfast, and that's huge. I just wrote a blog, actually, if you're at all interested. I just posted it on my website, which is annajonesrd.com. But all about sort of the different breakfast blenders that I see a lot of people make, and how to, some tips on how to do breakfast differently and more healthy, because it really does make a huge impact on, the rest of your day and, what your cravings are and that sort of thing. So if you're at all interested, I encourage you to check that out. Eating out less often. We talked about exercising more. The eating out, because we're busy or we're shopping or we're out a lot, that we can end up eating out often. So having a plan before you get to that day where you're going to be busy and want to end up eating out somewhere is critical. That's one of the things that I work with clients with over and over, is that pre-planning, sort of getting set for the week ahead, so that you have things, even if it's super quick, easy things, but you've got some things that you can just kind of throw together instead of eating out. Because, when we eat out, we tend to eat different things that we wouldn't normally eat, sometimes not so healthy, and then our portion sizes can be huge too. And then that whole concept of having that nutrient-dense half of our plate, the fruits and vegetables, is important. It's such a sort of a simple concept, and one we've heard a lot, but the more we can try to include those fruits and vegetables, the better. All right, so hopefully all of these have given you some ideas to sort of stay on track over the holiday season. Designing a healthy plate, staying mindful, being a healthy host, being a good guest, staying active, which is huge, being in charge at holiday parties. And notice I say in charge there and not in control. Maybe we'll go into that in a future webinar, but that's kind of an important point. You are in charge. You're in charge of your health, and you're in charge of your choices. And so that's just a good kind of thing to keep in mind, that it's easy to kind of get caught up in the stress or the busyness of the holidays, but make sure that you you just think about that you're in charge of your health. Beware of those liquid calories, whether it's alcohol or those coffee drinks or whatever it is, and then making your resolutions now versus waiting till January 1st. But any questions at this point? I'll look for hands raised. I don't see any. So I think we're going to move forward. All right, so we have our gift card. Who is ready to win a $50 Visa gift card from BodyTrack? One simple question: what is one way you can be mindful on a holiday and during the holiday season? And the first person to answer gets a $50 Visa gift card. All right, I'll give you a minute. What is one way? All right, I have Shawnee, I think is the way you pronounce Shawnee, says plate portions. So being mindful with preparing your plate, which is huge. So Shawnee, you win a $50 Visa gift card from BodyTrack. All right, and someone, let's see. Someone asked a question, Tamara asked a question, any suggestions on dessert, right after dinner or wait a bit? All right, so that's a great question, and I definitely recommend, and I assume you're talking about on an actual holiday, although I guess it could apply on any day, but I always recommend waiting for dessert. So, and there's a lot that goes on there. So you think about right after you eat, you're probably going to be more than satisfied, especially if it is like, say, on Thanksgiving or something like that. So if you were to wait, you're more than likely going to enjoy that dessert more if you give it a little time, you know, and maybe that's a good opportunity. Maybe you wait a half hour or something, and then you go on a walk, and then you come back and you can enjoy that dessert a lot more without just eating it just for the sake of eating it because it's there. So that kind of goes back to that whole idea of mindfulness too, is kind of, you know, really enjoying the food that you're eating and savoring it. So I guess the answer to your question is I would say wait a little bit and truly get enjoyment out of your food. All right, hopefully, Tamara, that answered your question. And some of the things I just kind of, yep, she says, yes, thanks, that did. And so just to review a little bit, just the answer, the plate is one way, slowing down, leaving the table when you're done, that's a big one. A lot of us tend to kind of graze, even though we're full or even more than full, we tend to kind of graze just because the food is there. So getting up and kind of leaving the table, whether it's to help to clean dishes or just to get outside for a little bit or whatever it is a great thing to do. Like I said, focusing on the appearance and flavors of the food. A lot of us don't take any time to do that, you know, to actually smell the food that's in front of us and look at the colors and that sort of thing. And it sounds maybe a little kind of hooey to do that, but the more you can sort of take in the food before you just go to town eating it, the more you're going to enjoy it and be aware of what you're eating. I was listening to something the other day, and a tip was to try not to fill your fork with your next bite while you're still chewing the bite that you're eating, which was huge for me because the next time I ate, I noticed, wow, I do that. As I'm eating and still chewing the bite that I'm working on currently, I'm steady getting the next bite. But so that more than likely means I'm thinking about the next bite versus the bite that's in my mouth. So just a kind of, simple thing, but that a lot of us don't think about. So something, to kind of pay attention to maybe the next time you eat. And just remember, it's not what you eat, on that Thanksgiving day or, one day out of the year that adds pounds. It's really taking those holidays and kind of stringing them all together and just kind of, forgetting all these strategies and all these tips and just kind of letting go. And if you can just little by little, stay on track, the better off you'll be when the beginning of the year comes. And if you overindulge, which is likely, don't throw in the towel. That's what a lot of people, the whole concept of that all or nothing kind of concept is, we tend to think, oh, I overate and just forget it. I might as well just, say it's Thanksgiving and you overdo it and you don't intend to, but you do, and you just say, okay, forget it. I'm just going to go for it the rest of the month and not worry about it. But instead, just think, okay, this was one day and now tomorrow is another day and I can kind of get back to it. And maybe you sort of do a workout, not as penance or because you're guilty, but just to kind of work off those extra calories. Or maybe you cut back and eat more vegetables in your next few meals, whatever it is, just try not to throw in the towel. Now, I do have a hand up. Shani, I'm going to try to unmute you. All right, Shani, are you there? Are you there? Okay, I don't know. She's not there. So I'm going to mute you back. She had her hand up. All right, so one last slide. So envision yourself, and again, this goes back to sort of setting that intention, envisioning yourself in January, how you want to feel, and hopefully that's feeling great, and if it is, maintaining whatever your goals are and sort of making it through the holidays in a healthy way. And the more you can kind of keep that vision in mind, the better off you'll be. And it's completely possible to be smart and be thoughtful and mindful about what you're eating throughout the holidays and get full enjoyment out of all that's available to us over the holiday season. So thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate your time, and hope you all have very happy holidays. I will be writing different blogs and that sort of thing with, including maybe some of these tips if you need a review or, some other timely things. So if you're interested at all, I encourage you to visit my website, and you can even follow my blog if you're interested. You just put your email in, and my blogs will be emailed to you. So, and I don't do too many where they're overwhelming. I usually do one every week or two. So thank you all so much again, and I look forward to next month. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.